Welcome to Calming Bedtime Historian Channel. Tonight we follow you onto the Oregon Trail where the coldest nights tested every ounce of human endurance. What did it truly feel like to lie awake beneath a thin canvas roof, knowing the temperature could quietly claim lives before morning? And how did ordinary families with children beside them survive conditions that seem almost impossible today? So before you settle into the story, take a second to like the video and hit subscribe. And while you are here, let me know your location and local time in the comments below. Now dim the lights. You wake before the light has fully arrived. Not because you choose to, but because the cold insists on it. It presses gently at first, then more firmly, until even your dreams feel brittle. The air inside the wagon has turned sharp overnight, carrying that dry, metallic scent that often comes when temperatures drop far below freezing. Your breath hangs faintly in front of you. It lingers, then disappears. You pull the blanket closer, feeling the coarse weave of wool against your chin, but it offers only a small comfort. Around you, the wagon is quiet, though not silent. There is the faint creak of wood contracting in the cold, the distant shifting of animals, and somewhere beyond the low whisper of wind moving across open land. You do not rush to move. There is a reason for that. Stepping out too quickly into the morning air can feel like walking into a wall of ice. Many travelers learned this the hard way, discovering that sudden exposure could steal breath and strength in a matter of seconds. So instead, you lie still for a moment longer, letting your body adjust, letting your senses gather the world slowly. Outside the prairie stretches endlessly, though you cannot yet see it clearly. What you can sense is its stillness. Winter on the Oregon Trail often brought a silence that felt almost unnatural, as if the land itself had paused. Snow absorbs sound, muting footsteps, softening voices, and turning even a busy camp into something hushed and distant. It is beautiful and unsettling. A commonly accepted detail about these journeys is that many wagon parties tried to avoid travelling deep into winter. Yet delays were frequent, and some families found themselves caught in conditions far harsher than they could planned. Supplies would run low, tempers would thin, and the cold would become a constant presence rather than a passing discomfort. You shift slightly, careful not to disturb those beside you. Space is limited, and every inch matters. Bodies are close not out of convenience but necessity. Shared warmth can mean the difference between a restless night and one that becomes dangerous. The simple act of sleeping near others becomes a form of protection. Your fingers feel stiff, they resist movement. You rub them together slowly, feeling the faint prickling sensation as warmth begins to return. It is not painful, not yet, but it reminds you how easily the body can lose its strength in this environment. Historians continue to debate exactly how cold some of these nights became on the trail, especially in certain stretches of the high plains and mountain passes. Records were not always precise, and personal journals often relied on description rather than measurement. Still, the repeated mentions of frozen water buckets, stiff clothing, and ice forming the inside wagons did suggest temperatures that pushed well below what most people would willingly endure. You sit up at last, carefully. The canvas above you is rimmed with a thin layer of frost, delicate patterns tracing along its surface like quiet artwork. It formed during the night as warm breath met the freezing fabric, a small reminder that even inside this shelter the cold finds its way in. Your hand brushes against it, it flakes softly. The texture is fragile, almost powdery, and for a moment it feels strangely delicate against your skin. Yet you know how deceptive that softness can be. Cold like this does not need to be harsh to be dangerous. It works slowly, patiently, wearing down resistance rather than breaking it outright. Outside, a sound carries faintly through the still air. A low animal call, then another. The oxen are waking, shifting their weight, their breath visible in the dim light. These animals are not just companions on the journey. They are essential. Without them, the wagons would not move, and without movement, survival would become far more uncertain. You pause listening. There is comfort in that sound. A lesser-known detail from the trail is that many families developed a quiet bond with their animals during these harsh conditions. Some diaries mention speaking to them in low voices during the night, not out of necessity, but out of a need for reassurance. In a landscape that could feel empty and indifferent, Even the presence of an animal offered a sense of shared endurance. You reach for your boots, which you had kept close to your body through the night. Leaving them outside the covers would mean waking to stiff leather nearly impossible to put on. Even now they feel cold but not frozen, and that small difference matters. You slide your feet inside, slowly. The leather presses firm against your skin, and you take a moment to adjust to let the warmth begin to spread. Every action in this environment takes a little more time, a little more thought. Rushing leads to mistakes, and mistakes in the cold can linger far longer than intended. A faint glow begins to form beyond the wagon. Morning is coming. Not brightly, not suddenly, but with a gradual shift that lightens the edges of the world. The sky moves from deep grey towards something softer, and the outlines of other wagons begin to appear, quiet shapes resting against the pale ground. You push aside the canvas flap just a little. The air that enters is sharper than anything inside, carrying the scent of snow-distant wood smoke and the faint trace of animals. It fills your lungs quickly, almost too quickly, and you pause, adjusting to its intensity. It's colder than yesterday. You can feel that immediately. Temperature changes were often noticed more by sensation than by numbers. A slight drop could transform routine tasks into difficult challenges, and what felt manageable one evening could become exhausting the next morning. You step down carefully onto the ground. The snow beneath your boots compresses with a soft, muted sound more felt than heard. It holds firm, a sign that the cold has settled deeply overnight. Around you, others are beginning to stir movements slow and deliberate, each person navigating the same quiet calculation of how to begin the day. No one speaks loudly. There is no need. The cold seems to encourage a certain kind of quiet, a shared understanding that energy must be conserved, that warmth must be protected. Even conversations become softer, shorter, shaped by breath that turns to mist with every word. You draw your coat tighter around you. The fabric feels heavy, reassuring in its weight, yet still not enough to fully keep the cold at bay. Layers help, but they are never perfect. Gaps remain, and the wind, when it comes, will find them easily. For now, though, there is a brief stillness, a moment before the day fully begins. You stand there looking out across the pale expanse, aware of both the beauty and the challenge it holds. This is only one morning among many, one cold night survived, one more step along a journey that demands patience, resilience, and a quiet kind of courage. And as the light continues to grow, you realize something simple. You are still here. The wind reaches you before you fully notice it. A slow, steady pressure that moves across the open land without interruption. It does not rush or howl just yet. It lingers, testing the edges of everything, slipping through seams and clothing, brushing along the sides of wagons, searching for any weakness it can quietly exploit. You feel it against your face, cold and deliberate. The camp begins to stir more fully now, though movement remains careful and measured. Each person understands without needing to say it aloud that the wind will shape the entire day. It always does. On the open stretches of the Oregon Trail, there is little to block its path. No dense forests, no tall buildings, only low grasses buried beneath snow and the long line of wagons stretched across the land. You turn back toward your wagon, studying it with a more practical eye. It is not simply a means of travel. It is your shelter, your storage, your protection against the elements. And on mornings like this, it must also become a barrier. A widely accepted historical understanding is that many wagon trains formed protective circles or partial enclosures when stopping for the night. These formations were not always perfect circles, despite how they are often imagined. More often they were arranged based on terrain, wind direction, and the urgency of the moment. The goal was simple: reduce exposure. Create a space where the wind would weaken, even if only slightly. You step closer, running your hand along the wooden side. The surface feels rigid beneath your fingers, colder than you expect, as if the night has settled deep into the grain. The canvas above it flutters faintly, reacting to each subtle shift in the air. It needs securing. You glance toward the others, noticing similar movements beginning across the camp. People step between wagons, speaking in low voices, adjusting positions, tightening ropes, checking stakes driven into the frozen ground. There is no formal command. It happens through habit, through shared experience built over many difficult nights. You move to the rear of the wagon where a length of rope has loosened slightly. Your fingers fumble at first, stiff from the cold, but you persist, tightening the knot with slow, deliberate care. Each small action contributes to the whole. A single loose flap can allow the wind to enter, and once inside it rarely leaves without taking warmth with it. The wind grows stronger, not sharply, but steadily. It presses now with more confidence, pushing against your coat, slipping through the layers, reminding you that it's not an enemy that attacks all at once. It is patient. It waits. It wears you down over time. You step back to observe the arrangement taking shape. Wagons angle inward their sides, forming a rough shield. Gaps are minimized where possible, filled with crates, spare boards, or whatever materials are available. Even small barriers matter. Even a slight reduction in wind can preserve warmth within the center of the camp. You notice the animals being guided closer. Oxen first, then horses. They are positioned carefully, not only for convenience but for protection. Animals generate heat, and their presence can soften the cold within the enclosed space. At the same time, they must be shielded from the worst of the wind, as their strength is essential for the journey ahead. Their breath rises in steady clouds, white against the grey morning. You pause to watch them, noticing the way they stand, heads lowered, slightly conserving energy. A lesser-known detail recorded in several trail journals is that animals often sense changes in weather before humans fully recognize them. Their restlessness or calmness could signal shifts in wind temperature or approaching storms. Travelers learn to pay attention to these signs, treating them as quiet warnings. You hear a voice nearby, soft, measured, someone suggesting a slight adjustment to one of the wagons, turning it just a little more into the wind. There is no argument, no resistance, only a shared understanding that small changes can have large effects when conditions are harsh. You move to assist, placing your shoulder against the wood alongside another traveller. Together, you push gently the wagon wheels, resisting at first, then shifting with a muted crunch against the frozen ground. The effort is not great, but it is enough to warm your body slightly, sending a faint wave of heat through your arms and chest. It feels welcome. Brief but welcome. As the wagon settles into its new position, the difference is almost immediate. The wind still moves across the camp, but its force is disrupted, broken into smaller currents that slip around the edges rather than striking directly. It is not complete protection, but it is something. And here something is enough. Historians continue to discuss how effective these wagon arrangements truly were, especially in extreme winter conditions. Some accounts suggest they provided meaningful shelter, reducing wind exposure significantly. Others imply that during the harshest storms their benefit was limited, offering only partial relief against forces far larger than any human effort. You stand within the newly formed space, noticing the subtle change in sound. Outside the barrier, the wind carries a steady whisper. Inside, it softens, becoming less constant, more intermittent. It is a small shift, but it alters the feeling of the place, making it seem slightly more contained, slightly more manageable. You draw a slow breath. The air still cold, but calmer. Nearby, someone begins preparing a fire gathering. What fuel remains dry enough to use. The placement is carefully chosen within the sheltered area where the wind will not immediately scatter sparks or extinguish the flame. Fire, like everything else here, requires planning, patience, and attention. You crouch for a moment, pressing your gloved hands together, feeling the fabric rub against itself. The texture is rough-worn from use, yet it serves its purpose. Every layer, every piece of clothing, every small adjustment contributes to survival in ways that might seem insignificant elsewhere. Nothing is wasted here. Nothing is ignored. You rise again, taking in the full arrangement of the camp. Wagons positioned with intention, animals gathered close, people moving with quiet purpose. It is not a perfect defense, not a fortress, but it is a response. A human effort to shape the environment even slightly in their favor. And that effort matters. You notice how the light has strengthened, revealing more of the surrounding land. The prairie stretches outward in all directions, pale and open, offering no natural barrier to the wind beyond what you've created. It is a reminder of both the vastness of the journey and the limits of control. Yet within this space there is a sense of order, a fragile stability. You step back toward your wagon, feeling the wind again as you near its edge. Stronger here, more insistent. The difference between inside and outside is clear, even if it is not dramatic. It reinforces the importance of what has been done, of the quiet coordination that shapes each morning. You pause once more, listening. The camp is no longer silent. There are small sounds now, movement, soft voices, the low shifting of animals, the faint crackle of kindling beginning to catch. Life continues, despite the cold, despite the wind, and as you stand there adjusting your coat once more, you understand something that becomes clearer with each passing day. Survival on the trail is not built on grand actions. It is built on small, steady choices, made again and again. The fire begins as a fragile idea rather than a certainty. A small gathering of twigs and hope placed carefully within the sheltered space of the wagons. You kneel close, aware that even the faintest gust could undo the effort before it truly begins. The cold presses in from every direction, patient and persistent, as if waiting to see whether you will succeed. You strike the steel, once, then again. A brief spark leaps, bright but fleeting, vanishing, almost as soon as it appears. You adjust your grip, steady your hands, and try again with more care. This time the spark finds the waiting tinder, catching just enough to glow faintly beneath the surface. It is barely there, a whisper of warmth. You lean closer, shielding it with your body, feeling the rough fabric of your coat brush against your knees. The smell of dry grass and scrap cloth rises as the ember begins to grow, releasing a faint scent that mixes with the sharpness of the cold air. You breathe gently toward it, not too much, just enough. The ember brightens, then dims, then brightens again, as if deciding whether to continue. Starting a fire in conditions like this is never guaranteed. Even experienced travelers could spend long minutes coaxing a flame from stubborn materials, especially when fuel has absorbed moisture, or when the air itself seems unwilling to cooperate. A well-established fact from trail life is that fire was not only a source of warmth, but a necessity for cooking, drying clothing, and maintaining morale. Without it, nights grew longer, colder, and far more difficult to endure. The presence of even a small flame could shift the entire mood of a camp. You add a few thin sticks, carefully. They rest above the ember, waiting, then slowly begin to darken as the heat spreads. A thin curl of smoke rises, twisting gently upward, before slipping into the open air above the wagons. The wind reaches for it, trying to pull it away, but within this sheltered space the movement is slower, less forceful. The flame appears at last, small, unsteady, but real. You hold your position, resisting the urge to move too quickly. A fire like this must be built patiently, layer by layer, each addition chosen with care. Too much fuel too soon can smother it. Too little and it fades before it can take hold. You listen to the faint crackle. It is a quiet sound, yet deeply reassuring. Around you others begin to notice, and a few glance over their movements, pausing briefly as they register the growing flame. There is no applause, no celebration, only a subtle shift in posture, a slight easing of tension that passes quietly from one person to another. Warmth is coming, slowly. A lesser-known detail from several pioneer accounts is that travellers often carried small amounts of carefully preserved tinder, sometimes wrapped in cloth or stored in containers to keep it dry. Materials like charred fabric or finely shredded bark were valued because they could catch a spark more easily than ordinary kindling. Losing such supplies could make starting a fire far more difficult, especially after days of snow or damp conditions. You reach for a thicker branch now, placing it gently across the growing flame. It begins to blacken at the edges, releasing a deeper scent, something richer and more grounded than the sharp smell of the initial tinder. The fire responds, rising slightly, its light flickering against the sides of the wagons. The glow spreads, soft and steady. You extend your hands toward it, palms open, feeling the first true warmth of the morning. It is not strong, not enough to fully push back the cold, but it touches your skin with a gentle heat that feels almost unfamiliar after the long night. Your fingers begin to loosen. The stiffness eases. You rotate your hands slowly, letting the warmth reach each side, careful not to move too close. In weather like this, sudden heat can bring discomfort, even pain as frozen skin reacts. It is better to warm gradually, allowing the body to adjust without shock. Historians continue to examine how different groups along the Oregon Trail adapted their fire-building techniques to varying conditions. Some relied heavily on buffalo chips when wood was scarce, especially on open plains where trees were limited. Others gathered driftwood near rivers, or carried small reserves with them when possible. Each method reflected the environment, the resources available, and the experience of those involved. You glance toward the horizon where the light has grown brighter, revealing more detail in the landscape. The snow reflects that light, softly creating a pale glow that contrasts with the darker shapes of wagons and figures moving slowly within the camp. The fire crackles again, a little stronger now. You add another piece of wood slightly larger this time, testing the fire's ability to sustain itself. It catches, though not immediately, and you watch closely as the flame works its way along the surface, finding purchase spreading gradually. Time passes quietly, measured in small adjustments, in careful observation. Nearby, someone brings a small pot, placing it near the edge of the fire where the heat is steady but not overwhelming. Water will be needed, whether for drinking, cooking, or simply warming hands around the container. Every use of the fire must be considered balanced against the limited fuel available. You notice the smell shifting again, smoke and wood, with a faint hint of something else, perhaps food from the previous night lingering in the pot now warming again. The scent is subtle, but it carries a sense of continuity, a reminder that each day connects to the next, even in these harsh conditions. You shift your position slightly, sitting back on your heels, feeling the ground firm beneath you. The cold remains present, pressing through layers, but the fire creates a small boundary, a space where its influence reaches outward in gentle waves. Not enough to change everything, but enough to matter. You look at the others again, noticing how they gather a little closer, now forming a loose circle around the flame. No one crowds it, no one claims it yet. Its presence draws people inward, creating a shared center in the middle of the camp. It becomes a focal point, a quiet anchor. Some accounts from the trail suggest that these moments around the fire were as important emotionally as they were physically. The act of tending a flame, of watching it grow, offered a sense of control in an environment that often felt unpredictable. It was a small victory repeated each more, reinforcing the belief that survival was possible. You extend your hands once more, feeling the warmth reach deeper, now settling into your skin, easing the tension that had built through the night. The contrast between cold and heat becomes more defined, more noticeable as your body adjusts. You breathe slowly, in, then out, the air still sharp but softened slightly by the presence of the fire. The smoke drifts upward, carrying its scent into the open space above where it disperses into the morning sky. You watch it for a moment, then return your attention to the flame. It holds steady now. Not large, not powerful, but dependable, and in a place like this that is enough. The warmth from the fire lingers only briefly once you step away, fading, as the cold reclaims its place around you. It does not rush in. It simply returns, settling quietly against your coat, your hands, your face, as if it had never truly left. You pull your coat tighter, instinctively. Layers matter now more than anything else. Each piece of clothing becomes part of a careful system, not simply worn, but arranged, adjusted, and relied upon. You feel the weight of wool across your shoulders, thick and slightly rough, holding in what little heat your body produces. It is never quite enough, but it helps. You move slowly, aware of how each layer responds. Beneath the coat, another garment presses closer to your skin, trapping warmth more effectively. Beneath that, perhaps something thinner, softer, worn long enough to feel familiar despite its wear. The cold tests every seam, every gap. You reach up to adjust the collar, pulling it higher against your neck. Even a small opening can allow the wind to slip through, drawing warmth away with surprising ease. Many travelers learn to wrap scarves or strips of cloth around exposed areas, creating barriers where clothing alone could not fully protect. You feel the fabric brush your chin, slightly damp, then cooling again. It is a constant cycle. Warmth, moisture, then cold returning. Managing that balance becomes part of daily survival, though no one explains it in formal terms. You simply learn through experience what works and what does not. You shift your attention to your hands. Gloves cover them thick, but worn their surfaces marked by repeated use. Inside your fingers move slowly, still, recovering from the stiffness of the morning. You flex them gently, feeling the gradual return of control. Not quickly, but steadily. An established understanding of life on the Oregon Trail is that proper clothing often determined how well families endured extreme weather. Wool was favoured because it retained warmth even when damp, unlike cottons, which could lose its insulating ability. Fur, when available, provided an additional layer of protection, though not every traveller had access to it. You glance toward others in the camp, noticing the variety in what people wear. Some coats appear heavier, better suited to the cold, while others show signs of strain, patched and repaired multiple times. Clothing was not easily replaced along the trail, and each piece had to last far longer than intended. You see someone adjusting a child's scarf, carefully, gently. The cloth is wrapped twice, then tucked securely, covering the lower part of the face. Children feel the cold more quickly, their smaller bodies losing heat at a faster rate. Families often prioritize their warmth first, using whatever materials were available to protect them. You watch for a moment, then look away. The wind shifts slightly, finding a new angle as it moves through the camp. It presses against your side now, testing the layers there, searching for weakness. You turn your body slightly, instinctively adjusting to reduce exposure. Movement helps. Even small movements. Standing still for too long allows the cold to settle deeper, to take hold more firmly. So you shift your weight, take a few slow steps, flex your arms, anything to keep your body engaged. It is a quiet kind of effort, but necessary. Some personal accounts from the trail mention families sleeping closely together during especially cold nights, not simply for comfort, but to conserve heat. Shared body warmth could create a small pocket of relative warmth, making the difference between restless discomfort and dangerous cold. It was not always comfortable, but comfort was rarely the goal. You recall the cramped space inside the wagon, the closeness, the shared breath warming the air just enough to matter. It lingers in your memory even now. You reach down to adjust your boots again, pressing them more firmly into place. The leather has softened slightly since you first put them on, responding to the gradual warmth of your feet. Still, the cold seeps through, especially where the material thins with use. You press your toes downward, testing sensation. They respond though slowly, and you feel a small sense of reassurance. Loss of feeling is something to watch for, something that can arrive quietly if you are not careful. There is a pause, a moment of stillness. Then you inhale deeply, the air sharp but familiar now. The scent carries faint traces of smoke from the fire mixed with the earthy smell of wool leather and the surrounding land. It is not unpleasant. It simply exists, part of the environment that surrounds you. The light continues to strengthen. Gradually, it reveals more detail in the camp, more movement, more signs of activity beginning. People adjust their clothing, check supplies, prepare for whatever the day will bring. Each action is deliberate, shaped by the understanding that energy must be used wisely. You notice how often people touch their clothing, adjusting, securing, checking. It becomes almost automatic, a repeated habit that ensures everything remains in place. A loose button, an untied strap, a shifted layer. Any of these could allow the cold to slip in more easily. A thoughtful observation among historians is that adaptation to cold conditions on the trail was not always immediate. Many travellers came from milder climates and had to learn, sometimes through hardship, how to dress and behave in extreme cold. Over time, they adjusted, developing routines that improved their chances of enduring the harshest nights. You feel that adjustment happening within yourself. Not fully, but gradually. You understand now that warmth is not a single solution, but a combination of small choices. Layering, movement, positioning, awareness. Each one contributing in its own way. No single action is enough, but together they create something more effective. You draw your coat closer again, out of habit, The fabric settles around you, holding what warmth it can, resisting the steady pressure of the cold. It is not perfect, but it is reliable, and reliability matters more than anything else here. You look out across the camp once more, seeing not just individuals, but a group adapting together, learning, adjusting, enduring. And as the wind continues to move beyond the wagons and the fire maintains its quiet presence behind you, you begin to understand something that feels both simple and important. Warmth is not something you find. It is something you build, piece by piece. The morning settles into a quiet rhythm shaped by small movements and careful attention. Yet beneath it all, you begin to notice a different kind of sound. It is not constant. It does not announce itself clearly. Instead, it arrives in intervals faint at first, then slightly more distinct, like something shifting far beneath the surface of the world. You pause to listen. It comes again, a low distant crack, then silence. You turn your head towards the direction of the sound, though the open landscape offers few clues. The river lies not too far from the camp, its course winding through the land, partially hidden now, beneath a layer of ice that formed slowly over the past days. The cold has taken hold there as well, but not completely. You step a little closer to the edge of the camp boots, pressing softly into the snow, and listen again. The air feels still, yet carries that faint echo once more, a sharp sound followed by a long quiet that seems to stretch further than expected. It is the river. You realize it gradually. Freezing, shifting, settling. An established observation from trail records is that rivers in winter rarely froze in a single solid layer all at once. Instead, ice formed, gradually thickening, unevenly, expanding and contracting with changes in temperature. This process often created cracks, pops, and deep resonant sounds that could travel surprising distances across the open land. You hear it again, a sharper break this time, then a soft, almost hollow response, as if the sound continues beneath the surface before fading. It is not threatening, not immediate yet. It carries a weight that is difficult to ignore. There is something about it that feels alive, as though the land itself is adjusting to the cold. You wrap your arms closer around yourself, not from fear, but from awareness. The river, like everything else here, must be understood carefully. It can offer passage, water, and direction, yet in winter it becomes unpredictable. Ice that appears solid may conceal weaker sections beneath, shaped by currents that continue to move below the surface. Some travelers describe these sounds in their journals with a mixture of curiosity and unease, noting how the cracking ice seemed to echo during the quietest parts of the night. Without other distractions, the sounds could feel amplified, turning distant shifts into something that seemed much closer than it truly was. You take a slow breath. The air enters sharply, then leaves just as quietly. There is a faint smell here, different from the center of the camp. It carries a subtle dampness, a hint of water beneath ice mixed with the clean scent of snow. It is a reminder that not everything is frozen solid, that movement continues even when it is hidden. You look out across the pale stretch where the river lies, its surface broken by irregular patterns, some areas smooth, others rough, shaped by wind and time. The light catches these surfaces differently, creating a patchwork of dull shine and muted shadow. It is still, but not entirely. A curious note found in some accounts is that the sounds of freezing rivers were sometimes mistaken for distant activity, especially by those unfamiliar with the phenomenon. In a landscape where visibility is limited and sound carries easily, distinguishing between natural and human movement could become surprisingly difficult. You listen again more carefully now, recognizing the pattern. The cracks are not random. They follow a rhythm shaped by temperature, by pressure, by the gradual expansion of ice as it responds to the cold. There is a pause, then another sound, short, sharp, gone. You find yourself standing still, not out of hesitation, but out of a quiet respect for what you are hearing. It is not something to approach carelessly, nor something to ignore. It simply exists, part of the environment that surrounds you, reminding you that survival here requires attention as much as action. Behind you, the camp continues its slow awakening. The fire burns steadily, voices remain low, movements remain deliberate. Yet here at the edge, the world feels slightly different, more open, more exposed. You shift your weight, feeling the firmness of the ground beneath your boots. The cold has locked the surface in place, but you know that beneath it layers may vary just as they do on the river. Stability is often only what appears on the surface. Researchers have long considered how travellers judge the safety of frozen rivers during westward journeys. Without modern tools, they relied on observation, experience, and sometimes trial. The colour of the ice, the presence of cracks, the sound beneath their feet all offered clues, though none provided certainty. You glance once more toward the river, measuring distance, considering it is not a decision for this moment, but it will come. Crossing will eventually be necessary, and when it does, these sounds will matter. They will shape choices, influence timing, and determine how carefully each step must be taken. For now, you remain where you are, listening, learning. The wind brushes lightly across the surface of the snow, carrying faint traces of sound back toward you. The crack of ice becomes softer at this distance, blending with the subtle movements of the air, becoming part of a larger quiet rather than standing apart from it. You close your eyes for a moment, just briefly. The sound continues even without sight, a reminder that the environment speaks in ways that do not always require seeing. It is enough to hear, to sense, to understand gradually. You open them again. The light has grown stronger, revealing more detail, more clarity, yet the feeling remains the same. Calm, mistled, slightly distant, the kind of stillness that holds movement beneath the steps. You turn back toward the camp, taking slow steps, leaving the edge behind for now. The fire's warmth reaches you again, faint at first, then more noticeable as you draw closer. The contrast between the two spaces becomes clear once more. One is quiet and open, the other is sheltered and shared. Both matter. You take your place near the others, the sound of the river fading slightly though never fully disappearing. It remains in the background, a steady reminder of the forces at work beyond what you can see. And as you settle back into the rhythm of the camp, you carry that awareness with you. A quiet understanding that even in stillness, the world continues to shift. Slowly, constantly. The fire has settled into a steady burn, no longer fragile, no longer uncertain, yet still carefully tended. Its warmth reaches outward in a soft circle, touching hands, faces, and the edges of heavy coats. It does not banish the cold, but it holds it back just enough to make the morning manageable. You sit near it now, not too close, just enough. The heat brushes your knees, then fades as you lean back slightly, creating a balance that feels familiar. Around you, others begin preparing the first food of the day, movements quiet, almost unspoken, as if each person already knows what must be done. You reach for the small bundle that holds your portion. It feels lighter than you remember. Inside, the contents are simple. Flour, perhaps a bit of dried meat, maybe a few beans or preserved scraps saved from earlier days. Nothing here is abundant, everything is measured. Carefully. A widely accepted detail of life on the Oregon Trail is that food supplies were planned with great attention before departure, yet often fell short as the journey stretched longer than expected. Miscalculations, spoilage, accidents, and unexpected delays all contributed to shortages, especially during colder months when progress slowed. You open the bundle and examine what remains. Not much, but enough. For now, you break a small portion free, weighing it in your hand for a moment before setting the rest aside. Decisions like this are rarely spoken aloud, yet they carry weight. How much to eat today affects how much remains tomorrow, and tomorrow is never guaranteed to be easier. You pass a piece toward someone nearby, a small gesture, shared without comment. It is accepted with a nod, and the exchange feels natural, part of an unspoken rhythm that has developed over time. Food, like warmth, becomes something that moves quietly between people, adjusted as needed, rarely fixed. You lean forward slightly as a pot is placed near the fire, its surface darkened from repeated use. Water inside begins to warm slowly, not yet steaming, but changing, shifting from stillness toward motion. You watch it, patiently. The smell begins to rise as ingredients are added, faint at first, then more noticeable. It is not rich or strong, but it carries something comforting, something that reminds you of meals that once felt more complete. It lingers in the air, gentle. A lesser-known observation from trail journals is that many families altered their diets significantly as supplies diminished, often relying on repetitive meals that provided basic sustenance rather than variety. Creativity in cooking became less about flavor and more about making limited resources last. You take a small bite of what you have set aside, chewing slowly. The texture is dry, the taste simple, yet it satisfies in a quiet way. Hunger sharpens appreciation, turning even the most modest food into something meaningful. You swallow, then pause, listening again to the subtle sounds around you. The fire crackles softly. The pot shifts slightly as the water warms, and nearby someone stirs the mixture with slow, steady movements. No one rushes. There is no reason to. You feel the warmth of the fire on one side of your body while the other side remains cool, a gentle contrast that reminds you of how uneven comfort can be here. You adjust slightly, turning to share the heat more evenly, though it never fully balances. It does not need to. Just enough is enough. Some historians suggest that rationing on the trail required constant adjustment, especially when unexpected delays forced families to remain in place longer than planned. Snowbound conditions, illness, or damaged equipment could all extend the journey, making careful distribution of food even more critical. You glance toward the bundles stored within the wagon, knowing that each one holds part of your future. Every item has been counted, considered, and preserved as best as possible. Loss is not easily replaced here. You draw your coat closer again. A habit now. The fabric shifts, settling around you as you return your focus to the pot. Steam begins to rise more clearly, carrying a faint warmth into the air, blending with the smoke from the fire. You inhale. The scent is simple, but reassuring. The mixture is not large, not enough for abundance, but it will be shared, divided carefully, each portion measured with quiet attention. No one takes more than needed, not because they are told, but because they understand. You notice the way people watch the pot, not with impatience, but with awareness. It represents more than food. It is a moment of stability, a brief pause in the demands of the journey, a chance to restore a little strength before the day continues. You shift your position again, stretching your legs slightly, feeling the stiffness ease just a bit. The ground remains firm beneath you. The cold still present, yet the fire and the food create a small space where the day begins to feel possible. You take another small bite, then another, spacing each one, allowing it to last. You hear a quiet voice nearby offering a suggestion about saving a portion for later, and it is met with agreement. Planning does not end with the meal itself. It extends forward, shaping the next hours, the next night, the next uncertain stretch of the trail. A thoughtful reflection found in some records is notes that the act of rationing required both discipline and trust. Discipline to limit oneself and trust that others would do the same. Without that balance, tension could grow, especially when supplies ran low. You feel that balance here, quietly maintained. You look around once more, seeing not just individuals but a group moving together, adapting to the same constraints, sharing the same challenges. Each person carries their own concerns, yet they align in these small essential moments. The pot is lifted carefully. Portions begin to be shared, each one modest, each one valued. You accept yours with a slight nod, holding it close, feeling the warmth seep into your hands through the container. It is not just nourishment. It is heat, comfort, and a reminder that even in scarcity, something can be created. You take a slow sip. It warms you from within. Gradually, you close your eyes for a brief moment, letting that warmth settle, letting it spread, even if only slightly, through the rest of your body. Then you open them again. The day is beginning, and you are ready to continue. The warmth from the meal fades more quickly than you expect, leaving behind a quiet awareness of the cold that never fully disappears. It settles back into your hands, your face, your feet, reminding you that comfort here is always temporary. You rise slowly. Carefully, the ground holds firm beneath your boots, the snow compressed into a surface that feels almost solid. Around you, the camp begins shifting into its next rhythm, one that centers not on rest but on responsibility. Your attention turns to the animals. They stand close together, their bodies forming a quiet cluster near the wagons. Their breath rises in steady clouds, each exhale visible in the cold air drifting upward before fading. They have endured the same night as you, though without blankets, without shelter as complete as your own. You step closer. The sound of your boots is soft, muted by snow. An often noted reality of the Oregon Trail is that oxen were the primary source of power for most wagons valued for their endurance and strength. Unlike horses, they could pull heavy loads over long distances with greater consistency, though they moved more slowly. Their survival was directly tied to yours. You reach out, placing your hand gently against the side of one ox. The warmth beneath its hide surprises you slightly, a steady heat that contrasts with the cold air surrounding you. Its coat is coarse, thick, and slightly damp from the night, yet it holds that warmth close. You keep your hand there, just for a moment. The animal shifts slightly, not in discomfort, but in acknowledgement. It does not pull away. It simply adjusts, maintaining its balance, conserving its energy. You move along the line, checking each one in turn. Their condition matters. Small changes can signal larger problems, and in weather like this, those problems can grow quickly if ignored. Their movements are slower this morning, more deliberate. You notice one lowering its head further than the others, its posture slightly heavier. You pause beside it, watching, listening, sensing whether this is fatigue or something more concerning. A detail recorded in several pioneer diaries suggests that animals often suffered silently during cold conditions, showing fewer outward signs of distress than humans might expect. This made observation even more important, as early signs could be subtle. You brush your hand along its neck. The fur feels thick, cold at the surface, warm beneath. It lifts its head slightly in response, a small motion that offers reassurance. You remain there for a few seconds longer, then step back satisfied for now that it is holding steady. Nearby others begin tending to the horses, checking hooves, adjusting harnesses, and ensuring that nothing has stiffened too much during the night. Leather straps can harden in the cold, becoming less flexible, more prone to cracking if forced too quickly. You hear the faint creak of harness being adjusted. Slow, measured. You move toward the supply area, retrieving a small portion of feed. It is not much, never as much as you would prefer, but it must be enough. Every bit of food given to the animals is weighed against what remains for the journey ahead. You carry it back carefully, holding it close. The oxen respond as you approach, not with sudden movement, but with quiet attention. They recognize the routine, the offering, the simple act that connects you to them in a shared effort to continue forward. You extend your hand, allowing them to take the feed gradually. Their movements are steady, unhurried, as if they understand the need to conserve energy just as you do. Their breath brushes your sleeve. Warm, then gone. A reflective observation found in historical accounts is that many travellers came to view their animals not only as tools, but as partners in survival. The bond formed through shared hardship often changed how people interacted with them, leading to a quieter, more attentive form of care. You notice how close they stand to one another, their bodies forming a natural barrier against the wind. This instinctive behaviour reduces exposure, allowing them to retain more warmth than if they were spread apart. You step back and look at the arrangement. It makes sense. Simple. Effective. The wind shifts again, brushing across the open edges of the camp, though its force is lessened within the wagon circle. Even so, you see how the animals angle themselves, slightly turning their bodies to reduce the impact, much as you have learned to do. You mirror the movement without thinking, turning slightly, adjusting. The connection between human and animal behaviour becomes clearer in moments like this. Survival teaches patterns that repeat across different forms of life shaped by the same environment, the same conditions. You move to check the harnesses once more, running your fingers along the straps, feeling for stiffness, for weakness, for anything that might fail under strain. Each connection point must hold when the wagons begin moving again. You press gently, testing. The leather responds, still firm but workable, softened slightly by the warmth of your hands. You make a small adjustment, tightening one section, loosening another, ensuring that the fit remains balanced. Nearby, a horse stamps its hoof lightly against the ground, a muted sound that carries through the snow. It is not restless, just shifting, maintaining circulation, staying warm through movement. You watch for a moment, then continue. The cold remains present, pressing at your face and your hands, your legs, yet the act of working keeps it from settling too deeply. Movement generates warmth, even if only in small amounts, and those small amounts matter. You take a slow breath. The air sharp, but familiar. The scent here is different from near the fire. It carries the earthy smell of animals, the faint trace of hay, the subtle dampness of breath meeting cold air. It is not unpleasant. It simply reflects the life that continues here. You step back once more, taking in the full scene. Wagons positioned carefully, fire still burning, people moving with purpose, animals standing ready, their strength preserved for the miles ahead. Everything is connected, each part supporting the others. You rest your hand briefly against the wagon beside you, feeling the solid wood beneath your palm. It anchors you for a moment, a steady presence in a landscape that can feel vast and uncertain. Then you let your hand fall. The day is moving forward, and so must you. By the time the light has fully settled across the camp, your thoughts begin to turn toward the night that will come again. It feels distant now, softened by the small comforts of fire and movement, yet you know it will return with the same quiet certainty. And when it does, you will return to the wagon. You glance at it now, standing still among the others, its canvas sides pale against the snow, its wooden frame steady and familiar. It does not look like much, not from the outside, but inside it holds everything. You step closer, lifting the canvas flap just enough to slip through. The air inside greets you immediately, slightly warmer than outside though, still carrying that dry chill that never quite fades. It smells faintly of wool leather, and the quiet presence of many nights spent in close quarters. You pause there for a moment, letting your eyes adjust. The interior feels smaller during the day when you can see it clearly. The space is limited, shaped by what must be carried, not what might be comfortable. Bundles rest along the sides, blankets folded or draped, where they can be reached easily. Small items tucked into corners to keep them from shifting during travel. Every inch has a purpose. You lower yourself carefully onto the edge of the wagon bed, feeling the firmness beneath the layers of fabric and padding. It is not soft in the way you might once have expected. Comfort here is defined differently, measured not by ease, but by protection. A widely recognized feature of wagon travel is that most families did not sleep inside the wagons every night. During milder weather, many chose to sleep outside for space and air. But in the coldest conditions, the wagon became essential, offering at least a partial barrier against wind and exposure. You run your hand across one of the blankets, feeling its texture thick and worn yet reliable. It has been used repeatedly, folded and unfolded, wrapped tightly around bodies seeking warmth. It holds memory. In its fibers, you lift it slightly, checking its position, making sure it will be ready when needed. Nights like the last one demand preparation before darkness arrives. Waiting too long makes every task harder, slower, less certain. You shift your weight, testing the space, imagining how it will feel when filled again. Bodies pressed close layers, adjusted breath, warming the air just enough to create a small difference. It will not be comfortable, but it will be necessary. A detail preserved in several personal writings suggests that sleeping arrangements on the trail often required flexibility. Families adjusted positions frequently, sharing blankets rotating, who slept closer to the center, ensuring that no one remained too long at the coldest edge. You lie back briefly, just to feel it. The surface beneath you is firm, the blanket slightly rough against your cheek. The ceiling of canvas sits low above, marked with faint lines where frost had formed earlier. Even now you can see traces of its delicate patterns that linger in the fabric. You reach up, touch it lightly. It crumbles at your fingertips, falling away in small flakes that vanish almost as soon as they land. The sensation is quiet, almost delicate, yet it reminds you of how easily the cold settles into every part of this space. You sit up again, slowly. The wagon creaks softly beneath your movement, the wood responding to your weight. It is a familiar sound now, one that blends into the background of daily life, yet it carries a certain reassurance. It means the structure holds. It means it continues to do its job. You glance toward the opening, where light filters through softer than before, diffused by the canvas. It creates a muted glow inside, enough to see by, but gentle, almost calming. You take a breath. The air here feels still. Contained. Some historical interpretations suggest that while wagons offered limited insulation, their true benefit came from blocking wind rather than retaining heat. The difference, though subtle, could be significant during extreme conditions, turning an exposed night into something slightly more manageable. You consider that as you look around. It makes sense. The walls are thin, the materials simple, yet they create a boundary, a separation from the open air that matters more than it might seem. You reach for a small item near your side, adjusting its position, ensuring it will not shift during movement. Organisation becomes essential in such a confined space. Losing track of even a small object can create unnecessary difficulty later. You place it back carefully, exactly where it belongs. The wagon feels quiet now, almost separate from the activity outside. Sounds reach you, but softened, filtered through the canvas and wood. Voices become distant movements, less distinct, as if the world beyond has stepped slightly away. It creates a sense of pause, a moment apart. You allow yourself to remain there for a few seconds longer, letting that quiet settle, letting your body rest before the day continues. Even short moments like this carry value, offering a brief recovery in an environment that rarely allows for full rest. You rise again, pushing the blanket back into place, smoothing it with your hand. Preparation now will make the night easier later. Every small action contributes to that outcome. You move toward the opening, lifting the canvas once more. The cold greets you again, immediate, clear. You step back outside the brightness of the day, returning the sounds of the camp becoming sharper, more defined. The fire still burns, the animals still stand. The people continue their quiet work. Life moves forward, as it must. You turn once more to look at the wagon, seeing it not just as a structure, but as a refuge that will be needed again. It's not perfect. It does not remove hardship, but it offers something essential, shelter, even if only partial. And as you step away, returning to the rhythm of the day, you carry with you the understanding that when the cold deepens once more, this small space will become everything again. The light holds steady for a while, soft and pale, yet you sense a change long before you see it. It begins as a shift in the air, a subtle tightening that presses against your skin in a way that feels different from the steady cold of the morning. You pause, listening. The wind has not grown louder, not yet, but it feels sharper, more directed, as if it has chosen a path rather than drifting across the land. You notice the animals first. Their posture changes slightly, heads lowering, bodies angling together more tightly. They feel it, too. You look toward the horizon. At first, there is nothing unusual. Just the wide stretch of pale ground meeting a muted sky. Then gradually you notice a faint disturbance, a soft blur that seems to move along the edge of sight. It is distant, but approaching. You narrow your gaze, focusing, trying to understand what you're seeing. The line between sky and land begins to soften, losing its clarity as the movement grows more defined. Snow lifted by the wind begins to rise into the air, carried forward in a low, spreading wave. A storm is forming. Not sudden, but certain. A well-known reality of travel along the Oregon Trail is that winter storms could arrive with little warning, especially across open plains where there were few natural barriers. What began as a calm morning could shift within hours into conditions that limited visibility and made movement nearly impossible. You draw your coat tighter again. A reflex now. The air feels colder, more urgent. Around you, the camp begins to respond, though without panic. Movements become quicker, more purposeful. People step between wagons, checking ties, securing loose items, ensuring that nothing will be taken by the wind once it rises. You move as well, instinctively. Your hands return to familiar tasks, tightening, straps, pressing down coverings, making sure that everything is as stable as it can be. The work feels repetitive, yet it carries weight, each action contributing to the ability to withstand what is coming. The wind shifts again, stronger this time. It brushes past your face with more force, carrying tiny particles of snow that sting lightly against your skin. They are not sharp enough to hurt, but they remind you how quickly the environment can change. You blink. The air feels different now, more active. A lesser discussed detail in personal accounts is how quickly sound could be altered during a snowstorm. As wind and snow intensified, familiar noises became harder to distinguish, swallowed by the constant movement of air and the soft impact of snow against surfaces. You hear it beginning, a low, steady rush, not loud, but growing. You turn back toward the center of the camp, noticing how the fire is being adjusted, shielded further, its flames lowered slightly to prevent them from being scattered. Even fire must adapt when the wind rises. You step toward the wagons again, checking the canvas flaps, ensuring they are secured tightly. The fabric pulls against its fastenings, responding to the increasing pressure of the air. It holds, but you reinforce it, tying it more firmly, reducing any movement that could grow into something larger. The sky changes, gradually. The light dims, not completely, but enough to shift the mood of the space. Shadows soften, edges blur, and the sense of distance begins to fade as the approaching snow thickens. You feel the first stronger gust. It pushes against you. Not enough to move you, but enough to demand your attention. Your body responds automatically, leaning slightly into it, adjusting your stance to remain steady. You have learned this quickly. An analytical observation from historians suggests that survival during sudden storms depended heavily on preparation completed before conditions worsened. Once visibility dropped and wind intensified, even simple tasks became far more difficult to perform. You understand that now. You work faster, but not rushed. There is a difference. You secure one final strap, then step back, scanning the area, looking for anything that might have been missed. Small details matter. A loose item, a weak tie, a shifted covering, any of these could become a problem once the storm fully arrives. The animals shift again, closer now, their bodies forming a tighter cluster, their movements more restricted, conserving energy, reducing exposure. Their breath rises more quickly, visible in thicker clouds that drift and scatter in the strengthening wind. You hear a voice, short, directed. A reminder to stay close, to keep within the sheltered area as much as possible once the storm reaches the camp. It is not shouted, it does not need to be. Everyone understands. You take one more look toward the horizon. The line is gone now, replaced by movement. Snow lifts into the air in greater volume, swirling, spreading, advancing steadily. It does not rush forward in a single wave. It expands, filling space, reducing clarity, turning the distance into something uncertain. You feel a moment of stillness within yourself. Not fear, but focus. The kind that settles when action becomes necessary. You adjust your gloves, pulling them tighter, ensuring that your fingers are fully covered. You shift your scarf, raising it higher across your rail, protecting your mouth and nose from the incoming cold. The wind grows louder, not sharply, but steadily. It fills the space around you, blending with the movement of snow, creating a continuous sound that begins to replace the quieter rhythms of the camp. You step back within the wagon circle, closer to shelter, closer to others. The first heavier flakes reach you, striking your coat, your hands, your face. They melt briefly, then vanish, replaced by more, each one adding to the growing presence of the storm. You stand there for a moment, feeling it begin. The cold deepens. The air thickens, the world shifts, and as the storm moves closer, you understand that the night ahead will not be like the last. It will be harder, colder, less forgiving, yet you remain where you are, prepared, as you can be surrounded by others who share the same understanding. The storm is coming, and you will face it together. The storm settles over the camp with a quiet insistence, not all at once, but in layers that build upon each other. Snow thickens in the air, drifting. At first, then moving with more direction as the wind gathers strength. The world narrows not suddenly but steadily as distance fades into a pale blur. You feel it on your skin, fine, persistent. The flakes land against your coat, your gloves, your face melting for a moment before vanishing into the cold. Over time, they begin to collect, forming a thin layer that must be brushed away if you wish to keep your clothing from growing damp. You raise your hand, clear it gently. The motion has become familiar. Around you, the camp draws inward. People move less, speaking in shorter phrases, conserving breath as much as energy. The fire remains, but its light is softer now, partially hidden behind makeshift barriers that shield it from the wind. You step closer to the wagons, seeking that slight protection. The air feels sharper here, not because it is colder, but because the wind carries more force, pushing against your clothing, finding edges, testing every layer you wear. It is not violent. It does not strike with sudden bursts. It presses continuously, wearing away warmth in slow, steady increments. You tighten your scarf. Higher! The fabric brushes your cheeks, slightly rough yet welcome. It traps a small pocket of warmth around your breath, making each inhale feel just a little less severe. A carefully documented pattern from trail accounts notes that extended exposure to cold often led to gradual numbing, rather than immediate pain. Travellers sometimes did not realise how much sensation they had lost until they attempted to use their hands or feet and found them unresponsive. You feel for that now? Subtly, your finger move within the gloves slower than before, though still responsive. You flex them gently, encouraging circulation, ensuring that warmth continues to reach them. It is a quiet check, but important. You shift your weight from one foot to the other, pressing your toes against the inside of your boots, maintaining movement, preventing stiffness from settling too deeply. The ground beneath you is firm, yet the surface layer begins to soften slightly as fresh snow accumulates. You hear the wind more clearly now, a steady rush. It fills the space between sounds, reducing everything else to something distant, something less defined. Voices become harder to distinguish, blending into the background as the storm continues to build. You turn your head slightly, scanning. Visibility has shortened, the far edges of the camp now less distinct shapes softened by the movement of snow. The wagons remain visible, their outline steady though partially veiled by the drifting white. A lesser highlighted detail in historical reflections is how storms affected not only movement but perception. Distances became harder to judge, direction less certain, even familiar surroundings taking on a different appearance under shifting snow and reduced light. You feel that shift now, subtle but present. You step closer to the side of a wagon, placing your hand against the wood. It feels solid, reassuring, a fixed point in a space that has begun to lose clarity. The surface is colder than before, the storm drawing more heat away, yet it remains steady beneath your touch. You keep your hand there briefly, grounding yourself. Then you let it fall. The cold continues its quiet work, pressing against exposed areas, seeking to slow you, to reduce movement, to encourage stillness. It is not an active force in the way wind might seem. It is passive, patient, waiting for the body to lose its resistance. You resist by moving, even slightly. You rub your hands together again, the fabric creating a faint friction, a small source of warmth that spreads slowly. You adjust your stance, shifting your shoulders, keeping your body engaged. An analytical perspective among historians and suggests that managing cold exposure relied as much on awareness as on physical resources. Recognizing early signs of numbness, adjusting clothing, maintaining movement. These actions often determined whether discomfort remained manageable or became dangerous. You understand that without needing it explained. You feel it. Your cheeks begin to lose some sensation, the cold dulling the edges of feeling. It is not painful, not yet, but it is noticeable. You raise your hand, pressing it gently against your face, restoring a bit of warmth through contact. You hold it there, just for a moment, then lower it again. Nearby, someone does the same, cupping their hands around their nose, breathing into them, creating a brief pocket of warmth. These small actions repeat across the camp, unspoken shared part of a quiet routine shaped by necessity. You notice how people remain close to the wagons. Closer than before, the circle holds its shape, more important now, its protection more valuable as the storm continues to press inward. The animals stand within their bodies, forming part of the barrier, their presence both practical and reassuring. Their breath rises thicker now, more visible. You listen again to the sound of the storm, noticing how it changes as it moves through different spaces. Against the wagons, it produces a soft, continuous brushing. Across open ground, it carries a longer, more flowing sound. It fills everything. You take a slow breath, feeling the cold air pass through the scarf, slightly tempered, yet still sharp enough to remind you where you are. The scent is clean, almost empty, carrying little beyond the faint trace of snow itself. Time becomes less distinct, measured not by clear moments, but by gradual change. The light dims further, though not completely. It remains filtered through the storm, creating a muted brightness that spreads evenly across the landscape. You remain where you are, present, aware. The cold continues to settle, the wind continues to move, and your body continues to respond, adjusting, adapting, holding on to the warmth it can maintain. And as you stand within the circle of wagons surrounded by others doing the same, you recognize a simple truth that becomes clearer with each passing moment. The danger here is not sudden, it is slow, quiet, persistent, and it must be met in the same way. As the storm continues its steady work beyond the wagons, the space within the circle shifts into something quieter, more contained. Movement slows, voices soften, and attention turns inward, not just towards survival, but towards something gentler. You settle closer to the fire. Carefully, the flames remain low controlled to preserve fuel, yet they offer enough light to illuminate the faces gathered nearby. The glow flickers across coats, scarves, and tired expressions, creating a rhythm of shadow and warmth that feels almost steady. You sit, not fully relaxed, but not tense either. The cold still presses in from every direction, yet here within this small circle it feels slightly less immediate. The wind moves around the outer edges, its sound present but softened, leaving space for something else to take shape. Someone begins to speak, quietly. The voice is calm, measured, not raised above the storm but carried gently within the group. You listen without turning, allowing the words to reach you naturally without effort. It is a story. Simple, familiar, not grand or dramatic, but steady like the voice itself. It moves at an unhurried pace, each sentence flowing into the next, offering a sense of continuity that mirrors the fire's steady burn. You let your attention follow it, not closely, just enough. A recurring observation in personal writings from the trail is that storytelling often became a way to maintain morale during difficult conditions. Without formal structure, without expectation, stories filled the quiet spaces, offering distraction, comfort, and a sense of shared experience. You feel that now. The cold remains. The storm continues. Yet the story creates a small shift, drawing your focus away from the constant awareness of the environment, allowing your mind to rest even briefly. You notice the way others respond, subtly, a slight nod, a faint smile, a relaxed posture. No one interrupts, no one rushes the speaker. The pace remains slow, deliberate, matching the rhythm of the moment. You lean slightly toward the fire, extending your hands just enough to catch its warmth. The heat touches your skin, gentle but real, contrasting with the cold that still lingers at your back. It feels balanced. For a moment, a small detail noted in several accounts is that humour, even in its quietest form, found a place within these gatherings. A light remark, a shared memory, a gentle observation could ease tension, offering relief without breaking the calm atmosphere. You hear it now, a soft laugh. Breathe, then gone. It does not disrupt the space, it blends into it, becoming part of the shared experience rather than standing apart from it. You adjust your position slightly, feeling the stiffness in your legs ease as you shift. The ground remains firm, the cold still present, yet the act of sitting, of listening, changes how you perceive it. It becomes less dominant, less immediate. You glance at the faces around you illuminated by the firelight. Each one reflects a different response to the same conditions. Some appear focused, others distant, others quietly at ease, as if the moment has allowed them to settle into a rare sense of stillness. You recognize that feeling, faint but present. An interpretive note among historians suggests that these shared moments played a significant role in group cohesion. In an environment where physical hardship was constant, emotional resilience became equally important, and simple interactions often help sustain it. You feel that connection here, not spoken, but understood. The story continues, its details unfolding slowly, carrying you through places and times that feel distant from the present. It does not erase the storm, it does not change the cold, but it shifts your focus, offering a brief sense of movement beyond the immediate surroundings. You listen, then drift slightly, not asleep, but not fully alert. The fire crackles softly, its sound blending with the voice, with the muted wind, with the quiet presence of those around you. It creates a layered atmosphere, one that feels steady despite the conditions beyond the wagons. You draw your coat closer again, more out of habit than need, feeling the fabric settle around you. The warmth from the fire reaches just enough to take the edge off the cold, allowing your body to relax in small ways. You take a slow breath. The air carries a mix of scents. Smoke from the fire, the faint trace of food from earlier, the subtle presence of wool and leather. It is not a single smell, but a combination that defines this moment. You exhale, slowly. The story nears its end, though it does not conclude with any clear signal. It simply fades, the voice, softening, the words slowing until silence returns naturally. No one speaks immediately after. There is no need. The quiet settles again, not empty, but full of the shared experience that has just passed. You remain where you are, hands near the fire body, slightly eased, mind calmer than before. The storm continues beyond the circle, its presence unchanged, yet your perception of it feels different. Less overwhelming, more distant. You understand now that survival is not only physical, it is also shaped by moments like this, small, quiet and shared, that provide balance against the demands of the environment. You glance once more at the fire, its flame steady, its light constant, offering both warmth and focus. Then you look around the circle again, seeing not just individuals but a group holding together, finding small ways to endure, to rest, to continue. And in that shared stillness you find something unexpected, a sense of calm. Even here, the quiet after the story lingers for a while, settling gently over the group like a thin layer of warmth that the fire alone could not provide. The storm continues its steady motion beyond the wagons, yet within this small circle something softer holds your attention. You notice the children. They're closer to the centre now, drawn inward. Without being asked, their smaller forms wrapped in layers that seem almost too large for them. Blankets fold around their shoulders, scarves sit high against their faces, and yet the cold still reaches them more easily than it does the adults. You shift slightly to make space. A small movement, barely noticeable. One of them sit near you, not speaking, just watching the fire with quiet focus. The light reflects in their eyes, flickering gently, creating a rhythm that feels steady, almost hypnotic. You glance down, then back to the fire. A consistent observation in pioneer records is that children experience the journey differently, not always understanding the full extent of the danger, yet feeling its effects through discomfort, fatigue, and the reactions of those around them. Their resilience often showed in unexpected ways, though their vulnerability remained constant. You see both here. The child beside you pulls the blanket closer, tucking it beneath their chin, adjusting it with small, careful movements. The fabric is heavy, perhaps unfamiliar, yet they manage it with quiet determination. You reach out, gently, not to take over, but to help. You adjust the edge slightly, securing it more firmly around their shoulders, ensuring that no gap remains where the cold might slip through. The child does not resist. They simply allow it, then settle again, a little more still than before. You withdraw your hand, slowly. The warmth of the fire touches your fingers once more as you bring them back, a brief reminder of the contrast between this sheltered space and the storm beyond. Nearby, another child leans against an adult, their head resting lightly, eyes half closed. Sleep does not come easily in conditions like this. Yet it arrives in fragments, small moments of rest that must be taken whenever possible. You hear a soft voice, low, reassuring. A few quiet words spoken close, not meant for the group, but for the one who listens. The tone matters more than the meaning, carrying a sense of calm that settles deeper than any explanation. You feel that effect even from a distance. Subtle, but present. A less frequently emphasized detail in historical accounts is how families adapted routines specifically for children during harsh conditions, creating small habits or rituals that offered a sense of stability. These actions did not remove hardship, but they helped shape how it was experienced. You see that here, in the way blankets are adjusted, in the way voices soften, in the way space is made. You shift your position slightly, feeling the stiffness in your legs return after sitting still. You extend one leg, then the other, careful not to disturb those around you. Movement remains necessary even in moments of rest. The fire continues to burn, steady. Its light remains constant, offering both warmth and a point of focus for everyone gathered near. You notice how often the children look toward it, as if drawn not just to its heat, but to its presence. It gives shape to the space. You glance upward briefly, though the canvas above blocks most of the sky. Still you sense the storm continuing, the wind moving the snow, falling all beyond the thin barrier that separates you from it. You return your gaze to the center, to the fire, to the people. A reflective interpretation from historians, and suggests that shared hardship often strengthened family bonds in ways that were not always visible in calmer times. The need to protect, to comfort, to support one another became more immediate, more constant, shaping relationships through repeated action. You feel that shaping here, not through words, but through presence. The child beside you shifts again, leaning slightly closer, not enough to press against you, but enough to feel the shared warmth more clearly. You do not move away. You remain as you are, allowing the closeness without drawing attention to it. It feels unspoken. The storm's sound changes slightly, a deeper rush now suggesting stronger wind beyond the wagons. The fire flickers in response, though it remains contained, its flames adjusting but not faltering. You watch it carefully, then relax again. The balance holds. You draw your coat closer once more, the familiar motion bringing a sense of control, however small. The fabric settles, the warmth remains, and your body responds by easing just a little further. You take a slow breath. The air carries the scent of smoke wool and the faint trace of something warm from earlier. It blends into a single presence, something that defines this moment without needing to be named. You exhale. Gradually, around you the children begin to quiet, further their movements, slowing their attention, drifting. Some lean against others, some sit still, their eyes soft, their posture relaxed in a way that suggests they are moving toward rest, even if sleep remains uncertain. You remain where you are, watching, listening, aware. And as the storm continues beyond the wagons and the fire holds its steady glow, you begin to understand something that feels both simple and deeply important. Strength here is not always loud. It is not always visible. Sometimes it's found in small gestures, in quiet care, in the steady presence of those who remain close. And in these moments you see it clearly, even in the cold. The storm presses on without pause, yet within the circle of wagons a different rhythm begins to take shape. It is quieter, more deliberate, guided not by the wind, but by the steady awareness that someone must remain alert. You feel it. That subtle shift. Rest is necessary, but so is watchfulness. The balance between the two becomes part of the routine, especially on nights like this when conditions can change without warning. You rise slowly from your place near the fire, careful not to disturb those who have settled into stillness. Movements are smaller now, more contained, as if the space itself encourages restraint. You step just beyond the warmest reach of the fire. The cold greets you again, immediate, clear. You draw your coat closer, adjusting the fabric with practiced ease. Then take another step outward, positioning yourself where you can see more of the camp without leaving the shelter it provides. This is your turn, not announced, but understood. A commonly noted practice among wagon groups was the rotation of night watches, where individuals took turns staying awake to monitor fires, animals, and changing weather. It was not always formal, but it has emerged as a practical necessity, especially during harsh conditions. You stand there, still, listening. The storm continues its steady motion, the wind brushing against the outer edges of the wagons, the snow shifting and settling in patterns that change with each passing moment. The sound is constant yet not overwhelming, a background presence that fills the space without demanding attention. You scan the area slowly, your eyes adjusting to the dim, diffused light that filters through the snow and cloud. Shapes remain visible, though soften the outlines of wagons, figures, and animals blending slightly into one another. You focus on the animals first. They remain close, grouped tightly. Their posture steady, their movements minimal. One shifts slightly, adjusting its stance, then settles again, conserving energy, maintaining warmth through stillness. You watch for a moment, then move on. A lesser emphasized observation in historical reflections is that night watches often served more than one purpose. Beyond guarding against immediate danger, they allowed individuals to track subtle changes in conditions, noticing shifts in wind direction, snowfall intensity, or the behavior of animals. You begin to notice those shifts now. The wind leans more heavily from one side, pressing against the wagons with a slightly different angle. Snow gathers along certain edges, forming small drifts that build gradually, almost imperceptibly. You step closer to one of the wagons, brushing away a small accumulation near its base. The snow falls easily, light and dry, yet it will return if left unattended. You clear just enough, then step back, The fire behind you crackles softly, its sound carrying through the stillness, offering both reassurance and responsibility. It must be maintained, not allowed to grow too large, not allowed to fade too low. You glance back at it, briefly, then return your attention outward. Your breath rises in steady clouds, visible even in the dim light, marking the rhythm of your presence in the cold air. You adjust your stance again, shifting your weight, keeping your body engaged. Movement remains essential. Even now, a thoughtful interpretation from historical study suggests that these periods of watchfulness often brought a different kind of awareness. Without the distraction of tasks or conversation, individuals became more attuned to their surroundings, noticing details that might otherwise go unnoticed. You feel that awareness settle in, quiet, focused. You hear a faint sound beyond the steady wind, something softer, irregular. You pause, listening more carefully, allowing the background noise to fade as you concentrate. It comes again, a slight movement. You turn toward it, narrowing your focus, tracing the direction. It leads you to the animals once more, where one shifts its position, hooves pressing lightly into the snow. Nothing unusual, just movement. You relax slightly, though your attention remains steady. You take a slow step along the inner edge of the wagon circle, moving carefully and ensuring that each area remains within view. The ground beneath your boots feels slightly uneven now, shaped by the accumulating snow, yet still firm enough to support your weight. You proceed without haste. Each step measured, the camp remains quiet, those resting near the fire. Largely still, their forms outlined by the faint glow that continues to hold its place at the center. The contrast between that warmth and the cold surrounding you becomes more noticeable as you move further from it. You feel it on your face, sharper now. You raise your hand, briefly adjusting the scarf again, ensuring that it remains secure. Small adjustments continue to matter even in these quieter moments. You return to your position, pausing once more to observe the entire space. Wagons hold their formation. Animals remain steady. The fire continues to burn, the storm moves beyond constant and unchanging. Everything holds. For now, you take another breath, the air filling your lungs, cold but familiar, then release it slowly, watching as it fades into the surrounding space. Time passes, not quickly, not slowly, just steadily. You remain where you are, aware of your role, aware of the space around you, maintaining that quiet vigilance that allows others to rest. And as you stand there listening to the wind, watching the subtle movements of the camp, you come to understand something that feels both simple and essential. Not everyone can sleep at once. Someone must stay awake. The hours stretch in a way that feels both long and indistinct, shaped more by sensation than by clear markers of time. The storm does not rush. It continues its steady motion, snow drifting, wind pressing the world beyond the wagons, remaining blurred and distant. You remain awake, watching, listening. At some point your term begins to ease toward its end, though no signal marks the change. Instead, it comes as a quiet understanding, a subtle shift in the rhythm of the camp as someone else stirs, preparing to take your place. You step back toward the fire, slowly. Its warmth reaches you again, gentle but noticeable, softening the edge of the cold that has settled across your face and hands. You pause near it, extending your fingers briefly, letting the heat return in small, careful waves. Not too close, just enough. A familiar pattern observed in accounts of trail life is the need to adjust constantly to changing conditions, especially when storms delayed travel. Days that were meant for movement became days of waiting, and waiting required a different kind of endurance. You feel that now, the stillness, the pause. You glance outward again, though the storm reveals little. The shapes beyond the wagons remain softened, the horizon completely gone, replaced by a uniform field of moving white. It is difficult to judge distance, difficult to imagine what lies beyond the immediate space. You turn back inward, toward the camp. People remain close to the fire, some resting, some simply sitting in quiet awareness. Movements are minimal energy conserved, each person adjusting to the slowed pace that the storm has imposed. You lower yourself carefully onto the ground once more, choosing a place where the warmth reaches without overwhelming. Your body responds immediately, easing slightly as you settle, though the cold remains present at the edges. You shift your legs, stretching, then stilling again, A lesser explored detail in pioneer narratives is how waiting itself became a challenge. Without the forward motion of the journey, time could feel uncertain, even heavy, requiring patience that was not always easy to maintain. You notice that feeling, subtle, but real. You look toward the wagons, their forms steady, their positions unchanged. Snow gathers along their sides, building gradually, creating small drifts that must be monitored but not yet addressed. There is no urgency. Not now. You draw your coat closer again, the motion automatic, the fabric settling into place as it has many times before. The familiarity of it offers a quiet sense of control even as the environment remains beyond your influence. You hear the fire shift, a soft crack, then a faint collapse as one piece of wood settles deeper into the embers. You lean forward slightly, adjusting it with a careful movement, ensuring that the flame remains steady, neither too strong nor too weak. It responds slowly, returning to its balanced state. An interpretive note from historical study suggests that maintaining routine tasks during periods of delay helped preserve a sense of order. Even simple actions like tending a fire or checking supplies provided structure when forward progress was not possible. You feel that structure here, in each small movement, in each repeated action. You glance toward the animals again, their forms barely shifting their presence steady within the circle. Snow gathers lightly along their backs, though their body heat prevents it from settling too deeply. They endure. Quietly, you watch them for a moment, then return your gaze to the fire. The light continues to flicker, its glow steady despite the conditions offering both warmth and focus. You take a slow breath, then another. The air carries the familiar mix of smoke and cold, a scent that has become part of your awareness, no longer unusual, no longer distracting. You let it settle. Time moves, though it is difficult to measure. The storm can imbues without clear change, its presence constant, its motion steady. You begin to sense that this will not pass quickly, that the delay may extend beyond a single day, perhaps longer. You consider that quietly, without resistance. A thoughtful reflection among historians suggests that flexibility became an essential trait for those traveling the Oregon Trail. Plans often changed, timelines shifted, and the ability to adapt determined how well individuals coped with unexpected conditions. You feel that adaptation within yourself, not complete, but growing. You adjust your position again, leaning slightly to one side, then settling back, finding a balance that allows both rest and awareness. Your body begins to relax, though your mind remains present, attentive to the space around you. You glance once more toward the outer edge of the camp, though little can be seen beyond the drifting snow. The world remains enclosed, defined by the wagons, the fire, and the people within it. Everything else fades, for now. You return your focus inward, allowing your gaze to soften, your thoughts to slow. The rhythm of the storm, the steady presence of the fire, and the quiet stillness of the group begin to blend together, creating a sense of continuity that carries you forward. And as you sit there waiting, adjusting, enduring, you come to recognize something that does not need to be spoken. The journey has paused, but it has not ended. The storm does not break all at once. Instead, it loosens its hold gradually, almost reluctantly, as if the land itself is deciding how much to release at a time. The wind softens, first not disappearing, but easing enough that its constant pressure becomes less demanding. You notice the change before you see it. A shift in sound. The steady rush fades into something lighter, more uneven, no longer filling every space between breaths. Snow still drifts through the air, but its movement feels less driven, less forceful. You lift your head slightly, listening. The camp responds in small ways. People begin to move a little more, stretching, adjusting, testing the space beyond the closest shelter of the wagons. No one rushes outward. The change is acknowledged quietly with caution. You rise, slowly. Your body feels heavier after the long period of stillness, joints, stiff muscles reluctant at first. You shift your weight from one foot to the other, allowing warmth to return through movement, letting your body adjust before taking another step. The ground beneath you has changed. Snow has gathered, not deeply, but enough. Each step presses into a softer surface, now the top layer giving slightly before meeting the firmer ground beneath. The sound is muted, a gentle compression that feels different from the solid surface of earlier. You take another step, then another. A widely recognized detail in accounts of winter travel is that snow accumulation around camps often required immediate attention once storms passed. Drifts could block movement, bury supplies, or place pressure against wagons if left unchecked. You see that beginning here. Small drifts have formed along the outer edges of the wagons, gathered by the direction of the wind shaped into uneven ridges that must be addressed before they grow larger. You move towards one of them, brushing it aside with your hands, then with your boot pushing the snow outward, clearing a narrow space along the base. The work is not difficult, but it requires repetition, each movement contributing to a larger effect. You continue. Steady! The cold remains, though less insistent than before. Without the strong wind, it feels more contained, more predictable, though still present in every breath, every touch. You pause briefly, looking outward. The horizon begins to return faint at first, then more defined as the drifting snow thins. Shapes emerge where there had been only white, the distant land reappearing slowly as if rising from beneath the storm. It feels different, more open. A lesser noted observation in trail records is how quickly the landscape could transform after a storm, shifting from obscured and uncertain to clear and expansive within a short span of time. This transition often brought both relief and new challenges as conditions beneath the snow revealed themselves. You glance back toward the wagons, noticing others beginning similar tasks, clearing, adjusting, restoring order to the camp. Movements are still measured, but there is a subtle increase in energy, a sense that progress is possible again. You continue clearing the snow, working along the edge, creating a space where the wagon can breathe, where pressure does not build against its side. The snow falls away easily, light and dry, yet it accumulates quickly if left alone. You brush your hands together. Snow falls away. The texture lingers briefly against your gloves, then disappears. You step back to assess the space, noting where more work is needed, where drifts remain, where paths must be reopened. Each area requires attention, though none demand urgency. Not yet. A thoughtful interpretation from historical analysis suggests that after storms, the process of recovery was often as important as the preparation before. Clearing paths, checking supplies, ensuring that nothing had been lost or damaged, all contributed to the ability to continue the journey. You feel that process beginning, quietly. You move toward another section, repeating the same careful motions, brushing, pushing, clearing, until the shape of the camp becomes more defined once again. The fire burns steadily behind you, its presence unchanged, though its role shifts now from survival during the storm to support during recovery. You glance at it, then return to your task. The animals begin to move more freely as well, stepping carefully through the snow, testing the stream surface, adjusting to the new conditions. Their movements are cautious at first, then more confident as they find stable footing. You watch them briefly, then continue. The air carries a different scent now, less sharp, more open, as if the storm has cleared something unseen. The smell of snow remains, but it feels lighter, less confined. You take a slow breath, then exhale. The rhythm of the camp continues to shift, gradually returning to something closer to normal, though changed by the experience that has just passed. You stand for a moment looking out across the landscape, now visible once more, though marked by the storm's passage. The ground is altered, the surface reshaped, yet the path remains. It always does. You draw your coat closer again, not out of immediate need, but from habit, from the understanding that conditions can change again without warning. You remain aware. You remain prepared. And as you look back toward the camp, seeing the progress made, the space cleared, the group moving together once more, you recognize something that feels steady and certain. The storm has passed, but its effects remain, and it is your task to move forward through them. The quiet after the storm carries a different weight than the quiet before it. The air feels clearer, though no warmer, and the space around you seems wider now that the wind has eased. Yet beneath that openness, something more delicate begins to emerge. You notice it in the way people move, slower, more deliberate. The effort of the storm lingers in the body and the mind, in the small pauses between actions. It is not exhaustion in a dramatic sense, but a steady wear that settles in quietly. You step toward the veiled wagon again, drawn by a subtle shift you cannot fully name. Inside, the air remains still slightly warmer than outside, though it carries a faint heaviness that was not there before. You lift the canvas carefully and step inside. The light is softer here, filtered through the fabric, creating a muted glow that outlines shapes without defining them sharply. You pause, letting your eyes adjust, letting your senses take in the space. It feels different. Not immediately, but gradually. You hear it first, a softer sound, a breath that does not follow the same steady rhythm as before. You turn your head slightly, focusing on where it comes from. Someone lies near the far side, wrapped in blankets, their form still yet not at rest in the usual way. Their breathing is uneven, shallow, at times deeper at others. You remain still, listening. A carefully documented aspect of life on the Oregon Trail is that illness often spread more easily during periods of confinement, especially in cold weather when people stayed close together. Conditions that might have remained minor in other settings could become more serious when combined with exposure and fatigue. You take a slow step closer, not rushing. The air feels warmer here, but also heavier, carrying the faint scent of damp fabric and human presence. It's not unpleasant, but it suggests closeness, shared space, and the limits of ventilation within the wagon. You kneel beside them, quietly. Their face is partially covered, though you can see enough to notice the subtle signs. The skin appears flushed in places, pale in others, a contrast that draws your attention. Their breath leaves their lips in soft, uneven motions. You do not speak. Not yet. A less frequently highlighted detail in historical accounts is how often travellers relied on observation rather than formal knowledge when dealing with illness. Without access to the trained medical care, they paid close attention to small changes, using experience and instinct to guide their actions. You reach out, gently, placing your hand near their forehead, not pressing, just enough to feel. The warmth there is noticeable, different from the surrounding air, suggesting a rise in temperature that does not belong to the environment. You withdraw your hand slowly, considering. You glance toward the blankets, adjusting them slightly, ensuring they remain secure without trapping too much heat. Balance matters here, just as it does with the fire, with clothing, with every other aspect of survival. Too much warmth can be as difficult as too little. You sit back on your heels, listening again, measuring the rhythm of their breathing, noting its changes, its pauses, its here. It is not steady, but it is present, and that presence matters. You take a breath, then another. Outside the camp continues its slow recovery, the sounds of movement faint but steady. Inside the space remains quieter, more contained, focused on this single moment. An interpretive view among historians suggests that illness on the trail often forced difficult decisions, not always dramatic, but constant, shaping how families allocated time, energy, and resources. You feel the weight of that. Even now, you adjust your position, again reaching for a nearby cloth, dampening it slightly with what water is available, then placing it carefully where it can provide some relief. The action is simple, but it carries intention, a quiet effort to ease discomfort without causing further strain. You watch for a response, a small shift, a slight change in breathing. It comes, subtle, but enough. You remain there for a few moments longer, ensuring that everything is as stable as it can be, that nothing has been overlooked. The cold outside the storm that has just passed all of it has left its mark, not always visible, not always immediate. You understand that now, more clearly than before. You rise slowly, careful not to disturb the stillness that has settled within the wagon. The air remains quiet, the light soft, the presence of illness adding a layer of awareness that changes how you move, how you think. You step back toward the opening, lifting the canvas once more. The cold meets you again, sharp, clean. You step outside, returning to the broader space of the camp, though part of your attention remains behind, held within that quieter, more fragile moment. You draw your coat closer, feeling the familiar weight, the steady protection it offers. Around you, the others continue their work, clearing, adjusting, preparing for what comes next. Life moves forward, as it must, but now you carry something else with you, a deeper awareness that survival is not only shaped by wind and cold, but also by the quiet challenges that arise within. The air feels clearer now, though the cold still lingers in every breath you take. The storm has passed, and the camp begins to regain its sense of direction, yet your attention turns outward again towards something that has been waiting. The river. You remember the sounds from before, the distant cracking, the shifting beneath the surface. Now with the storm gone, the path toward it lies open once more, though not without question. You walk slowly in that direction, carefully. Each step presses into the snow, leaving a clear imprint behind you, marking your movement across the pale ground. The light reflects off the surface, creating a soft brightness that makes the distance difficult to judge. You narrow your focus, watching. The river comes into view gradually, its surface no longer hidden by drifting snow but revealed in uneven patches of ice and shadow. Some areas appear smooth, others broken, shaped by the forces that move through it during the night. It is not still, not entirely. A widely acknowledged reality of winter travel is that frozen rivers often presented both opportunity and danger. They could provide a direct path forward, saving time and effort, yet they also carried risk, especially when the ice varied in thickness. You stop at the edge. Looking down, the ice beneath your feet appears solid, yet you know appearance can be misleading. The surface holds patterns, faint lines that stretch across it, marks left by expansion and pressure. You listen. At first there is nothing. Then faintly a sound rises from below, a soft shifting, almost like a distant echo. It does not repeat immediately, but its presence is enough to remind you that the river continues to move beneath the frozen layer. You take a small step forward. Testing. The surface holds. You shift your weight slightly, feeling for any change, any response beneath you. The ice remains firm, though the sensation carries a subtle uncertainty, something that cannot be fully measured. A lesser discussed aspect in historical reflections is how travellers relied on multiple cues to judge ice safety, including sound, colour, and the behaviour of others who crossed before them. No single sign offered complete certainty, making each decision a careful balance of observation and trust. You look ahead, tracing a path that seems more stable, where the ice appears thicker, less fractured. The colour shifts slightly, there deeper, less reflective, suggesting greater density. You move another step, then pause again. Your breath rises in the cold air, visible, marking the rhythm of your movement. You remain focused, aware of each sensation, each subtle change beneath your feet. You hear it again, a faint crack, not directly beneath you, but somewhere further along, carried through the surface. It is not loud, not immediate yet. It travels clearly, a reminder that the river is not fully at rest. You remain still. Listening. An analytical perspective from historical study suggests that many crossings were made with caution, often one person at a time, allowing the group to assess conditions gradually rather than risking everything at once. You understand that instinctively. You shift your stance slightly, adjusting your balance, ensuring that your weight remains evenly distributed. Each movement is deliberate, measured, avoiding any sudden change that might stress the surface. You glance back briefly toward the camp. It remains visible, though distant now, its shape steady against the open land. The wagons, the fire, the people, all part of a space that feels both close and far at the same time. You return your focus forward. Another step. The ice responds with a soft, muted sound, more felt than heard, a subtle acknowledgement of your presence. It holds, though the sensation remains unfamiliar, a reminder that this is not solid ground in the usual sense. You take a breath, slow, controlled. The air fills your lungs, cold but clear, sharpening your awareness rather than dulling it. You move again, following the path you have chosen, staying within the areas that appear most stable. A reflective note from historical interpretation suggests that these moments required a particular kind of focus, one that combined caution with confidence. Too much hesitation could slow progress, while too little could lead to risk. You feel that balance now, holding it. You reach a point where the ice appears thicker, its surface less marked by cracks, more uniform in appearance. You pause there, allowing yourself a moment to observe, to listen, to consider the next movement. The river remains quiet. For now, you shift your weight again, testing, confirming, then take another step, continuing forward with the same careful attention. Behind you, the marks of your path remain clear, each step recorded in the snow, each decision visible in the pattern you have created. You do not rush. You do not stop. You continue. And as you move across the frozen surface, aware of the unseen water beneath, Aware of the risk and the necessity, you understand something that feels both simple and profound. This path is uncertain, but it must be taken. You reach the far side of the river with a final careful step, feeling the solid ground return beneath your boots. The difference is immediate. Snow over earth feels steadier than ice over moving water, even when both are cold and firm to the touch. You pause there, just for a moment. Looking back, the river stretches behind you, its surface quiet again, though you know better than to trust that stillness completely. The path you crossed remains visible, marked by your footsteps, a thin line connecting one side to the other. It feels fragile, yet real. You turn forward once more, aware that crossing is only one part of what lies ahead. The land beyond the river carries its own challenges, its own quiet demands that reveal themselves slowly. You take a few steps onward. The snow here less disturbed its surface, smooth, unbroken, except for your own movement. Each step leaves a clear impression, a sign of presence in a place that otherwise remains untouched. You notice the silence. Deeper here. The camp sounds no longer reach you, replaced by a stillness that feels more complete, more isolated. Even the wind seems to move differently, softer, less confined by the structures behind you. You continue walking, measured, aware. A commonly accepted understanding of the Oregon Trail is that not all losses occurred in dramatic ways. Many were quiet, gradual, shaped by conditions rather than single events. Illness, exposure, and exhaustion often left their mark over time, changing the course of journeys in ways that were not always immediately visible. You feel the weight of that thought as you move forward. Not heavy, but present. The ground rises slightly ahead, forming a gentle incline that leads to a small clearing. You follow it, your steps steady, your breath visible in the cold air, rising and fading with each exhale. At the top you stop again. Looking outward, the landscape stretches before you, pale and open, marked only by subtle variations in snow and terrain. It is quiet in a way that feels almost complete, as if the world has paused here for longer than it should. You notice something then, a shape, low, partially covered by snow. You approach slowly, your steps, careful not out of fear, but out of respect for what you may find. As you draw closer, the form becomes clearer, though still softened by the snow that has gathered over it. It is still, unmoving. You stop a short distance away. The meaning settles gradually. A thoughtful observation from historical reflection suggests that burial practices on the trail often had to adapt to conditions. In winter, frozen ground made traditional methods difficult, sometimes impossible, leading travelers to find alternative ways to honor those who had passed. You stand there, quiet. The snow has shaped the surface gently, creating a smooth covering that blends the form into the surrounding land. There are no markers, no clear signs, only the subtle indication that something rests beneath. You do not move closer. There is no need. The space carries its own meaning without further action. You lower your gaze slightly, not out of obligation, but out of a natural response to the stillness before you. The cold air feels sharper here, though it may only be your awareness that has changed. You take a slow breath, then release it. A less frequently discussed detail in personal accounts is how travelers often carried these moments quietly, without extended ceremony, not from lack of care but from necessity. The journey demanded continuation even when pause felt more natural. You feel that tension now, between stillness and movement. You remain there for a few seconds longer, allowing the moment to settle, to be recognized, without needing words. The silence holds unbroken, offering space for reflection without asking for anything more. You glance once more at the shape beneath the snow, then lift your gaze. The path ahead remains, clear, unchanged. You turn slowly, stepping back from the place, your boots pressing into the snow, leaving new marks that move away rather than toward. Each step feels deliberate, not hurried yet, guided by the understanding that you cannot remain here indefinitely. You walk back towards the river, your path retracing itself, though your awareness has shifted. The crossing now carries a different weight, shaped by what you have just encountered. You reach the edge again, pause, then step onto the ice, carefully. The surface responds as before, holding though never fully reassuring. You move with the same attention, the same measured pace, though your thoughts carry something quieter now, something that lingers beneath the surface. You cross, step by step, returning to the camp, to the people, to the shared space that continues to hold life in motion. The wagons come into view again, their shape steady, their presence grounding. You step onto solid ground once more. The difference is clear. You take a breath, deep. The air fills your lungs, cold but steady, and you release it slowly, letting the moment pass without holding onto it too tightly. You re-enter the circle of the camp, your movements blending once more with those around you. No one asks where you have been. No one needs to. The day continues, shaped by tasks, by preparation, by the quiet effort to move forward. And as you settle back into that rhythm, you carry with you a simple understanding. Not all moments on this journey are loud. Some are quiet, and they remain with you. The camp settles into a quieter rhythm as the day stretches on, shaped by recovery, by reflection, and by the steady awareness that movement will soon return. The storm has passed, yet its presence lingers in the altered ground, in the slower pace of each task, in the way people carry themselves. You feel it in your steps, in your breath. You move between the wagons, checking what remains, adjusting what has shifted, restoring small pieces of order that were disturbed by wind and snow. Each action is simple, yet together they rebuild the sense of readiness that the journey requires. You pause near the fire, watching it. The flames burn lower now, not from neglect, but from intention. Fuel must be preserved, measured against what lies ahead. Even with the storm behind you, the cold remains, and each resource must be used with care. You crouch slightly, adjusting a piece of wood, ensuring that it continues to burn evenly. The fire responds with a soft crackle, its light steady, its warmth consistent. You sit back. Briefly, the air feels different now, still cold yet less pressing. Less immediate. Without the wind, the cold becomes something you can work with, something that allows for movement without constant resistance. A widely recognized pattern in accounts of the Oregon Trail is that travelers gradually adapted to their environment not through sudden change, but through repeated experience. Each challenge shaped their response, refining how they dressed, moved, and made decisions. You notice that change within yourself. Subtle, but real. You move more deliberately now, not because you must think about each action, but because your body has learned what is required. You adjust your coat without hesitation. You shift your stance without effort. You recognize the signs of cold before they deepen. It has become part of you. You rise again, stepping toward the outer edge of the camp where the snow has been cleared enough to reveal the path that will soon be taken. The ground remains uneven, marked by the storm yet passable. You test it with your foot, firm, stable. A lesser emphasized detail in historical observation tells us how quickly travelers had to transition from rest to movement after delays. Time lost to weather often created pressure to continue even when conditions were not ideal. You feel that pressure now, not spoken, but understood. You glance toward the wagons, imagining them in motion again, wheels turning, animals pulling the slow, steady progress that defines the journey. It feels distant after the stillness, yet also familiar, as if it has been waiting just beyond reach. You take a slow breath. The air is clear, sharp. It carries the scent of snow and wood with a faint trace of the fire that continues to burn behind you. It feels cleaner than before, as if the storm has swept away something unseen. You turn slightly, watching as others continue their preparations. Supplies are checked. Harnesses are adjusted. Small repairs are made where needed. No one rushes, yet the pace has changed. There is intention now. A thoughtful interpretation from historical analysis suggests that endurance on the trail was not only about surviving individual challenges, but about maintaining the ability to continue afterward. Recovery was not a separate phase. It was part of the same process. You understand that clearly now. You feel it in your body, in the way you move, in the way you think about what comes next. The storm did not stop the journey. It shaped, it altered, it required a pause, but not an end. You step forward again, following the cleared path, extending it, slightly pressing the snow down, making it easier for the wagons to follow. Each step contributes to what will come, even if it feels small in the moment. You continue. Dead! The animals shift nearby, their movements more active now, responding to the change in pace, sensing the return of motion. They step more freely, their bodies adjusting after the stillness, preparing for the effort ahead. You watch them briefly, then return to your task. The sun begins to move lower in the sky, its light softening, casting longer shadows across the snow. The day is not yet ending, but it is moving toward that point where decisions will be made about whether to remain or to continue. You feel that moment approaching. Gradually, you pause once more, looking out across the landscape, now fully visible again though marked by the storm's passage. The path ahead is not clear in every detail, but it exists stretching forward as it always has. You draw your coat closer, not from necessity, but from habit. You stand there for a moment longer, allowing the scene to settle, allowing your thoughts to align with the steady rhythm that has carried you this far. And as you turn back toward the camp, ready to continue the work that remains, you recognize something that feels both quiet and certain. Endurance is not a single act. It is a series of small decisions, made again and again. The light begins to soften as the day draws toward its quiet close, not fading all at once, but easing gradually across the snow-covered ground. Shadows stretch longer, blending gently into the pale surface while the sky above shifts into a calmer, more muted tone. You notice it without needing to look directly. A slowing, a settling. The camp responds in kind. Movements become less frequent, voices quieter, as if everyone senses the same transition at the same time. The work of the day has been done, or at least enough of it to allow for rest. You stand near the wagon, your hand resting lightly against its side, feeling the solid wood beneath your fingers. It has held through the storm, through the cold, through each passing hour without complaint. Reliable, steady. You step away from it, slowly turning your attention outward, taking in the full space of the camp one more time. The fire burns low, carefully maintained its glow softer now, casting a warm circle that draws everyone inward once again. You move toward it, without hurry. The animals have settled their forms quiet, their breath rising in slow, steady clouds that catch the last of the light. They stand closer than before, conserving warmth, preparing for another night that will test them just as the last one did. You notice their stillness. It mirrors your own. A commonly accepted understanding of these journeys is that each day did not end with certainty, but with preparation. The night ahead was always a continuation of the same effort, requiring the same care, the same attention, the same quiet resilience. You lower yourself near the fire, feeling the ground firm beneath you, the warmth reaching out in gentle waves. It is familiar now, this balance between cold and heat, between exposure and shelter. You draw your coat closer. As you always do, the fabric settles around you, holding what warmth it can, creating a small boundary between your body and the air beyond. It is not complete protection, but it is enough. Enough to rest. Enough to continue. A reflective perspective found in historical interpretation suggests that over time many travelers developed a deeper awareness of their environment, not as something to resist, but as something to move within. This shift did not remove hardship, but it changed how it was experienced. You feel that shift now. Quiet. Steady. You no longer react to every change. You anticipate it. You adjust before it fully arrives. You understand the rhythm of the cold, the wind, the movement of the land in a way that once felt unfamiliar. It has become part of your awareness. You take a slow breath, the air cool but not as sharp as before, carrying the faint scent of smoke, of wool, of the quiet life that continues here. It settles into your lungs, then leaves just as gently. You lean back slightly, allowing your body to rest more fully, supported by the ground, by the layers you have arranged, by the presence of those around you. No one speaks. There is no need. The fire provides its own rhythm. A soft crackle that rises and falls, steady enough to follow, gentle enough to soothe. The light flickers across the space, touching faces, coats, and the edges of the wagons, creating a sense of continuity that feels almost unbroken. You close your eyes for a moment, not to sleep, just to rest them. The sounds remain, the warmth remains, the awareness as here remains even without sight. You feel the presence of the group, the shared stillness, the quiet understanding that carries from one person to another, without words. You open your eyes again. The light has dimmed further, the sky deepening into a softer shade. The world around you becoming less defined, more blended, as the evening settles in. You draw your coat closer once more, though the motion is slower now, more relaxed, guided by habit rather than urgency. You feel the warmth of the fire, you feel the cold beyond it. Both remain balanced. A lesser discussed observation in historical reflections is that survival on the trail often led to a quiet appreciation of small consistencies. The fire that burns each night, the wagon that shelters, the group that endures together. These elements repeated again and again form a kind of stability within uncertainty. You recognize those consistencies now, you rely on them. You allow them to shape your sense of place, your sense of time, your understanding of what it means to continue. The night deepens slowly without sudden change, the transition so gradual that it feels almost seamless. The fire burns lower, though still steady its glow enough to hold the space together. You let your body settle further, relaxing, releasing the tension that has built through the day. Your breathing slows, matching the rhythm of the fire, of the quiet around you, of the steady presence that remains even as the world beyond fades into darkness. And as you sit there, surrounded by the soft glow, the quiet breath of those nearby, and the gentle hush of the land at rest, you begin to feel the edges of the day soften. The cold remains, but it no longer presses as sharply. The journey continues, but it no longer feels uncertain in the same way. You are here, you have endured, and now you rest. The fire flickers, the night settles, and slowly, gently you allow yourself to drift, held by the quiet rhythm of a world that continues even in stillness. Sleep well.